So yeah, let's start with this famous sayings from Sun Tzu. The first one, it's pretty much saying you need to have your threat intelligence done. You need to know about your blue team. You need to know about your red team, right? So if you know about all these three, then you're good. The second one pretty much saying you have a good blue team, but you don't really have threat intel, or haven't done much red teaming, then you might get lucky, right? Or you might not. Who knows? The third one is you don't have any of that, then you're kind of in a bad voters, right? So let's start from that note. Bit about me. Thanks, Gogo, for the warm introduction. And I'm an associate director within cyber defense services in KPMG Australia. I look after technical security assessments, so including pen testing, red teaming, and purple teaming. I'm also a advisory board member for CREST Australia, and pen testing is pretty much my bread and butter. I would introduce myself as a pen tester, but in recent years, more during the COVID time, I was involving with our incident response and forensic practice on providing SME inputs to ongoing investigations on cyber breaches, because we had big names hit the news during that time, so I was part of some of them. So agenda is pretty simple. I'm going to talk about evolution of operational resilience. That's a buzzword these days, especially emerged from Kuri. Right, so I'm gonna talk about that from a red teaming point of view, and I'll be sharing few war stories and then the lessons learned from them. In terms of war stories, I have few case studies. I'm not sure whether the time permits to discuss all of them, so it's based on Luke's signal. I'll decide which one I would pick and which one I could skip. Yeah, and then I'll also walk you through the key takeaways from this session. So there are key takeaways for two parties. The first takeaway for the vendors or the pen testers or the consultants, and then the second part of the takeaway is that if you're a part of the buying community, especially for CREST, right? So what are the things you should know before I jump into the waters of red teaming? So in terms of operational resilience, right? So what is operational resilience? Operational resilience is the ability to, you have the ability to continue in the business even when you face a potential shock or a incident. So that shock could be a pandemic, could be a man-made threat, could be a natural disaster, right? So but we're looking at that particular part from the red teaming perspective. Bit of an introduction about these terminologies. I had a couple of folks jump into me in the morning, asked that, is red teaming or purple teaming, are they new concepts? They're not really new concepts. They've been there for ages, right? So what is red teaming? So red teaming is pretty much the adversarial outlook of a execution, right? So we testing that operational resilience from a threat actor perspective. So we're using the same TTPs as an actual attacker, and then we'll assess the vulnerabilities. We're pretty much testing assumptions in the organizations, and then potentially viewing alternate options for attacks, and understand the limitations of certain capabilities of the organizations to detect and respond to an event, right? So historically, there was a tendency of putting a lot of money under the prevention buckets of the organization budget, but red teaming is more on investing in detection and response capabilities rather than just focusing on preventing. And in terms of the goal of a red team, how many of you here in consultancies and did red teams? Red teams, all right, yeah. So what is the goal of the red team? So the goal is pretty much, red teamers, we do cool stuff. We break in and we make the blue team cry, right? So that's like a personal goal. But in terms of the actual goal of the pen testing, the red teaming, is that it's not to make sure red team get in and achieve the objective, right? So the whole purpose of doing the red team is to make sure that they can't get in, right? So because it's about the blue team, right? It's about assessing the capabilities, strength, and weaknesses of the blue team, right? So this is my takeaway, right? So some may agree, some may not agree, but we're happy to have a discussion around it. So if SOC did not catch it, my way of doing it is be a bit noisier and gradually getting noisier, right? Until you get caught. If you not get caught during the course of an engagement, then the organization has a bigger problem to worry, right? So the whole point is about that blue team. It's not about how cool the team is and how capable the red team is. It's about blue team. It's not about you. It's about the blue team. So every red team, in my opinion, need to have a full disclosure follow-up with the blue team, right? So that can be executed as a bit of a, not necessarily a purple, but bit of a replay around it, right? So the blue team. Blue team is pretty much the defender's perspective of the organization, right? And their job is a bit hard, right? So they pretty much the job is to not necessarily catching the red team, but identify are there any potential attacks or breaches, and then detect and respond to it. And their job is largely challenging, right? So blue team has tendency to get the blame for the whole organization, right? So they might, they might understand there are like 5,000 odd servers which hasn't been unpatched for the last 6 years due to various reasons, but they don't have the visibility of that particular system. However, they're in a position to get blame around that why you haven't had the visibility, right? So blue team's job is a bit hard and challenging. So when you're doing a red team, that's something you need to consider as well, right? So the purple teaming aspect is a symbiotic relationship between red teamers and blue teamers, right? So this is the evolution form of red and red teaming, right? So how to build that relationship? So you pretty much build a culture or mindset around working with the blue team rather than it's the red team and blue team exercise. It's not a red versus blue team. It's the red and blue team symbiotic relationship to working, closely or better to achieve the pretty much the same objective, right? And in this purple team exercise, you're only assessing the valuable test cases. So the scenarios you're going to develop are, valuable test cases to the organizations. You may not have, cool objectives, right? But it could be an execution of a agreed scenario on multiple levels, right? As I said, if the SOC is not picking up your attacks or your, TTPs, just be noisy, right? So you can do that in this side of exercise because you can pretty much see what the blue team people are doing. The blue teamers are doing, so then you can contribute. And then the communication is key to this exercise. I'm going to walk through some of my recent experience around a purple team I did with one Australian bank which had another bank in New Zealand. So we did that together, right? So evaluation of the red, blue, purple teaming. So, historically we had vulnerability assessment, penetration testing, then we had objective-based penetration testing, then we had, advisory simulations, emulations, and, whatnot, right? I think the world is moving, especially in the light of Curi frameworks and the operational resilience, the world is moving more on that, intelligence-led part, right? So if you're if you're doing a red team without intelligence around the threat intel around the particular industry, that may not be a red team. That might be a glorified objective-based pen test, right? So My view is the evaluation is that concatenating red, purple, and gold teams, right? And then you do it as an integrated assessment, right? So you do a crisis management goal team exercise early stage, right? So then you do the red team, then a purple or a replay, and then again do a goal team, right? So when you're doing the initial crisis assessment or the goal team exercise, they be probably very confident on their playbooks, because they know the organization is sound, right? So on the tabletop exercise, it might look good, they might have some confidence, but when you evolve this particular exercise for a number of period, say usually few months, and then once you explain them exactly this is what happened throughout the exercise, and this is where the threat actor got in, and this is what has happened, this was the actual response from your blue team, then the way they look at things might be different, right? So this is a good experience, this is a good takeaway for the goal team or the execs of the organizations to understand where they are at, right? So then they can pretty much self-review their responses of the initial crisis management or the crisis exercise versus the second one, right? So I call that as a hybrid approach of cyber resilience management. Might not want to take any pictures of here. So this is our pre-COVID. So when we're doing red teaming in pre-COVID world, we build physical implants, right? So that's the Raspberry Pi with a 4G dongle built in, and we connect that to, there's a little bit of a hub situation there. We connect that to the organization network, and then we had out of band connection into that particular network, right? So we did a lot of implants like that. And the bottom one, there was a person trying to go under the table. That's a CISO of a firm, right? So we had a goal team exercise. Before we do the goal team exercise, we did a red team, right? So one of the goal of the goal team is to pretty much figure out where were our implants, right? So we helped them to locate places, and then they had to go and figure out where the places were, right? And then the one in the bottom is pretty much like an access pass. So COVID actually changed the way we did red teaming to a degree, because of I'm from Melbourne, so majority of our team is based in Melbourne, right? So we had travel problems, right? So we have to evolve. So we change our TTPs more into remote, right? So we build things around that. And one of the key insights I get from my previous experience is that, that there's not enough time to begin with of those engagements, right? And the lack of prep time can be a major problem. So if you're trying to do phishing campaign on you're thinking of doing it today, and then you executing or sending emails tomorrow, that's not gonna have much luck in it. So you need to have a proper prep time. And then there's also a window of opportunity when you're doing red teaming, right? So red teamings are pretty much opportunistic. We have this grand plan of getting the objective done, but a plan may not go as you actually planned, right? So you have to take the certain opportunities very seriously, and then if you're not prepped enough, then you lose this opportunity window, and then pretty much run out of the time. And blue teams are strong sometimes, and then they have good capabilities, just like the red team, there are good people in the blue teams, right? So even what happened when that situation occurs, right? So you try to rush yourself up. So don't do that, because you just blow your cover even on the last day of the engagement, right? And then other insight is try to use domain fronting, right? So in our most recent engagements, we're using Azure, right? So that's a great platform to provide you domain fronting capability. And then just make sure not to use default or payloads. Just try to use smarter payload. Sometimes, you can agree on, even when you're doing purple teaming exercises, you can build scenarios around what type of, C2 implants you're using if you want to go into that granular level, right? And then you can try using the most basic sort of a cobalt strike payload or the implant into a obfuscated version, right? So you can try executing the same scenario using 3 different payloads, right? So you can see what is the sophistication of the blue team to understand A, B, C payloads, right? So if they can't identify the first one, then there's no point of doing the third one, right? So, but if they detect the first one, try executing a more obfuscated version and see whether they have the capability to identify that. So that's the beauty of purple teaming, right? So not necessarily on red teaming, but then, you can be creative on the red teamings as well, right? No non-web shell, don't put, China Chopper into like an external web service, because, that's going to raise hell of a lot of alarms, and they're going to actually respond to it as like a threat actor, right? So that's fine. If they detected it, that's fine for the blue team, and then you actually identify that capability, right? So, have multiple, beacons, right? So don't just have one. So the second picture with everything in red is a kind of a rushed area, right? So we had a window of opportunity, and then we just use it using one particular piece of implant, right? So you can see all the traffics are going to one location, and then if the blue team pick that up, so it's a whole red team going to be blown out. On this other one, we had certain preparation done, and we managed to build traffic to multiple different C2 servers. So then, we had a better luck there. And then in terms of domains, think about the, legalities. Aging, just like good whiskey, just need to be aged properly, right? So don't try to use, 1 week old domain here. So, and then domain categorization, I'm not going to, dig one deep up, but then this is to provide that, 100 or the 1,000-foot view of this, right? So SPF, DKIM, DMARC, they're important as well. Sometimes it happened to us actually. So, we did a really great phishing campaign, age domain, great payloads, but the client never received the emails because kind of forgot the SPF record, right? So it's been picked by the mail filtering. So yeah, shame on us. And then the payments, how you doing the payments for the web hosting? Are you doing the account management right? So using corporate accounts to do that. And then what happened when the blue team executed a domain takedown, right? So that's going to impact as well. So think about those things. And then this is my personal favorite. I remember I told you that it's all about the blue team. Well, it's okay to have some fun when you're doing the red team as well, right? So this is a good approach for red herring. So you're trying to give some distraction to the blue team, and then see whether they're capable of handling a distraction well, right? Not necessarily distraction. These are attack scenarios, right? So we were doing purple teaming across 2 large financial institutions, and we did 2 different scenarios, right? So they were not abstract, they were very granular to the dot that we'll be executing A, B, C things, right? And distraction was lazy C2s, default payloads for one bank, right? And then we use a really obfuscated payload for the other bank. It's not like really obfuscated, it just encrypted the payload, payload with the machine name, right? So not much obfuscation, but the second bank couldn't pick that up, but the first bank did, right? So, and then the EDR could be a great distraction as well, right? So EDR is not the silver bullet, it actually gives you visibility, right? So you run system, you run things on systems which has EDR, so they might pick at it and then see how you can bypass the EDR and spawn another session around it, and then see whether they have the capability to pick up the second session as well. Like, do not make the second session also traffic going to the same team service, right? So make sure you have a different C2 server, and then the traffic is actually different. And then ICA file could be a good distractor as well, right? So any antivirus have the ability to pick up ICA. So, try that as well, right? So you just need to make sure, you're not blowing your cover by doing these things. So, the moral of the story is always have multiple ways into the particular organization if you want to actually test these things to a proper strength. I'm gonna skip the healthcare sector, and then this one. So this one is I was very passionate about this particular instance because we did a red team, and along with that we did some pen testing as well, right? So it's a packaged solution for this particular organization. So we had a clear window of opportunity there. We had a physical not necessarily a black team, but the physical was on the scope, and then their particular building was it's like very secure. So there's a security guard always on the door. So remember in the team's comment in the morning that red teams are not 9 to 5, right? Red teams are not just 9 to 5 folks, right? So they're very passionate about what they're doing, and we passionately had a dinner next to the client office, and then on the way we saw that one of the tenants' light was open, and apparently, being prepared, we had a couple of implants with us. So what we did, we just went to the organization, plug one at the reception. So now we had a window of opportunity to identify and do noisy attacks, because we knew that we gonna get flagged on the next morning, because there was no place to properly hide it. We just left it on the behind like a phone line, right? So that night few folks were busy, and then we went really noise in the network and then environment, right? And then we already had the MAC address of the Raspberry Pi as a Raspberry Pi, right? So we created a distraction, and then they detected the noise, and then they also managed to successfully locate the device, right? And then next couple of days we went to a few other locations and plugged Raspberry Pis into the organization, right? So they detected all the Raspberry Pis, and along with that we also had a different network card and then plug other implants. So they managed to detect all the Raspberry Pis, because with this incident they were thinking that the traffic coming from Raspberry Pis, these guys are just using Raspberry Pis, just hunt MAC addresses of Raspberry Pis, right? So we managed to gain to the technical objective. One of the technical objective was steal 10,000 customer records from their Salesforce instance without raising any alert, right? I'm not getting into the technicalities. We managed to do that without any incident raising. Fun fact about this particular exercise is that when you're doing red teams, when you're doing scoping, even in pen testing, right? So sometimes you just need to look at third parties as well. So as consultancies, we are not supposed to test any third-party organizations as part of the pen test, right? However, if those systems has sensitive information, the client can use the clause in the contract like right to audits, or they can cope up with the external providers to see whether could we pen test these applications, right? So the third party approved, and then the client approved. So we did a little pen test of this tiny little teeny web application. So what we found was an S3 bucket full of lot of PII information, right? So our goal is to get 10,000 customer records from PII information from the CRM. That's the red team goal, but we just did achieve the same objective on a simple pen test by running one command to figure out open S3 buckets, right? So it's important to have that third party coverage as well, right? So it might be a tricky area to go in. So key takeaways for the buyer community: defense in depth, always a good one, right? And then ASD Essential 8, it's a bit hard, but Essential 8 has some good insights for organizations to apply. And then empower your blue team if they haven't, they miss some alerts, or if they miss some, detection that maybe, you might need to invest on technical or technology or tools or even people, right? So be empathic around that, right? And then sometimes you need to wonder that, do you really need a red team? That red team comes at the later stage of your security maturity. You don't start everything with a red team, right? So red teams come after rounds of reviews, security reviews and pen test, because pen testing, we're focusing on controls and certain processes. Red team, we focus on people, process, technology, right? And then if you're doing red teaming, try to move into purple, because that's add more value, right? And then this is my take, unified cyber resilience. So this is where, my view of, having gold team, red team, purple team and gold team, and have an integrated view to give an organization that full visibility of their cyber resilience. I start with Sun Tzu and ending with me. So, it's much easier and economical to uplift cybersecurity maturity after a red team than a security breach. So keep that in mind, and that's it.